certainly my preference, I'll probably have to leave early, Lawrence, but my preference would be for us to go for a format of something like one academic talk and one industrial talk, which means the academic speakers will be pressured to give us a talk, and you'll see that it's really worth doing. But equally, we're looking for you guys from industry to pitch forward and also come and give us a short talk about what you're up to. I know that this kind of format has worked very well in other cities for fostering connections between academia and industry. Just because we're hosting it here today doesn't mean that we want the meetings to all happen in RMIT, doesn't mean we only want them to happen in one university. So, we just wanted to get this going again. I think a CBD location is a better place to have these things, but we just wanted to sort of start these things running. And I certainly have a beer and pizza budget that will last for a bit, and then we'll start looking to the rest of you to your beer and pizza budgets also. So that's enough from me. So I have a very long introduction for Dave Hawking. You may or may not know that Bing has a presence in Australia. It's kind of an interesting distributed presence. There are 3 people in Canberra, and so they represent the locus of research and operations for Bing, but there's also 1 or 2 people here in Melbourne. Is there one in Perth?
Yes, I believe there is.
I believe there is. That's how well coordinated they are. And indeed, actually, a lot of the Bing people in Redmond are actually old Australian academics. So in fact, some of them are the students of David Hawking, who used to be a professor working at ANU, then worked at CSIRO. He then, as part of his work at CSIRO, got into enterprise search and spun out a company called Funnelback, which is still going great guns, and indeed often picks up business from people who've got sick of the Google search appliance. Funnelback actually does an awesome job of search over enterprise data. But Dave decided he had enough of that and went to get a job with Microsoft, and now works with Bing as well. He is an extremely well-respected academic as well as an industrial researcher. Won countless awards in Neuchâtel in Switzerland. So you're an honorary doctorate. So you won this Chris Wallace Award in Australasia, and also the Tony Strix Award with Doug Cutting, with an illustrious person who we are working with. I will stop there and I will hand over to Dave.
You can keep going with all that.
No.
I thought that Melbourne was not only a centre of technology, but also a centre of culture. So I'm rather disappointed in the dress code. I dressed to suit what I expected would be the dress code of academics in Melbourne. Disappointed I am. So you probably recognise the origin of this quote. It's probably a debatable topic. So we're here tonight to answer, is this really an exciting time to work on search? So on the one hand, we have realists like Alistair and his colleagues who tell us that the performance of Trek ad hoc systems, the academic systems that work on Trek ad hoc, hasn't improved since 1998, I think it's, yes, 1998. And it wasn't very good at the time. If you look at the results of the best systems in Trek ad hoc, they only retrieved 3 relevant documents in the top 10 on average. I think that's about right. In some years it was even less than that. So in general, the performance of search tools on news archives, patents, scientific papers and so on, it's weak and it's plateaued. On the other hand, simple web search works brilliantly well. This was my query for the Falkirk wheel. Mark will certainly know about that, wherever he is. And search engines like Bing and Google actually engineer results. They extract things out of Wikipedia pages. They present images. They present videos. The opening times of the, if you want to go and see it, etc. And they deliver almost instantaneous response. They aggregate over sources. They extract knowledge. They compute answers. If you put in an arithmetic formula into Google or Bing, you get the answer. if you put in something that looks like a flight code, then you get when that flight's arriving. If you have a parcel tracking code, then you get the details of that parcel, and et cetera, et cetera. And nowadays, you can even do it when you speak the query. There are some examples where, what is the population of, how old is so-and-so, who is the director of this or that, works brilliantly well. So is the situation we're in one where one class of search problem is completely solved and the rest of it's intractable? Are we in a period of doom and gloom? Well, my boss's boss's boss doesn't agree. He gave a keynote at Wisdom 2016, and it was a very forward-looking, exciting talk, and I didn't hear it, but I heard from people who were there, and I've seen his slide deck, and he painted a very mind-boggling picture of an emerging digital society. And some of the things he highlighted were computing is now always on and always present. You've got a web browser and access to a search engine there, and I bet just about everybody else has. And the phone that you've got is on, and you can access it at any time. When we store data in the cloud, then it doesn't actually matter which device you're on. You can access it from your phone or your tablet or your home computer or your work computer or whatever. And she was pointing to the fact that in the future, most physical things and most processes will have a digital representation. The Internet of Things will explode and all sorts of possibilities will arise. This particular internet toaster is developed by Electrolux, and it's a way of printing images on slices of bread by burning them. That's very practical. I foresee a great future for that.
Great Valentine's Day gift.
Sorry?
Great Valentine's Day gift.
Yes, I guess so. So Chi also talked about conversational interfaces, and his prediction was that they would become very, very much more important. And he highlighted what's been achieved through WeChat. I guess there are a lot of people here who use WeChat and know all about it. And essentially in China, lots of people don't have tablets or desktop computers or whatever. They use a smartphone for communicating, for searching, for researching products, getting product catalogs, for buying things, etc., etc. So the WeChat is an indication that you can do huge things, search things and business things, via a chat interface. So it's a gateway and access to any information, and it's a launch pad to applications and services. And people are developing smart bots at the other end. You're not only having conversations with humans, but you're having conversations with machines. And of course, if we're a chat interface, then the natural language is the universal medium of exchange, and we have to do better at it. So that raises the question, in Chi's Brave New World, what are the boundaries of search? Is chit-chat, in China it's very popular. There's a Microsoft product called Shore Ice. Is that the correct pronunciation? Shore Ice, which will...
In Mandarin, it's called Xiaobing. Xiaobing in Mandarin. But if you translate it, maybe you can call it Shore Ice or Small Ice.
Oh, right. Yeah. I see. Yeah. Okay. And it will, communicate like Eliza used to, with the doctor. So is that actually information retrieval? It potentially could be. What about booking transport or hotels? Is that an information retrieval problem? Or product recommenders, are they within the boundaries of search and information retrieval? So, you know, where do search and information retrieval techniques come in? I'm not going to answer any of these questions, but I think, you know, my research interests focus on stuff where it's goal-directed behaviour, where we're trying to achieve a task and we engage with the computer system to find answers or information. And trivial search is not very interesting. So, is conversation the answer to everything? Well, we can evaluate conversational systems. And this paper by Walker et al. Showed this diagram, and even though there are 8 copies of these slides all around the place, it's a little bit hard to read, and I don't have a laser pointer. But at the top level, the goal is to maximise user satisfaction. And we can either do that on the left-hand side by maximising the task success. You know, we're trying to satisfy some goal. We interact with a conversational successful as a system, and we're successful to a greater or lesser extent. So we want to maximise the left-hand branch. The other side, we want to minimise the cost. So you can measure the cost in a conversational system by the number of turns or the amount of elapsed time to achieve the degree of success where you stop. And a point I make is that you can use this system, this method of evaluating conversational systems to evaluate whether a conversational system is a good answer to the problem that you're trying to solve. So, you know, in many information needs, you can solve your problem quite adequately with a 2-word query submitted to a search engine. And in those sort of scenarios, maybe conversation plays a role when the instant answer doesn't work. And so we can evaluate, you know, with the 2-word search, instant search, we didn't manage to succeed with the problem. We might have had to submit lots and lots of 2-word queries. With a conversational interface where there's to and fro, you know, did you mean I don't quite understand what you said, you know, I'm talking about this, that, or the other. Maybe we can achieve a greater degree of success, or maybe we can succeed where an instant one-shot search doesn't work. So this is an example of a case where the evaluation methodology clearly comes out in favour of one of these interfaces versus another. This is the task of booking a taxi, and with Uber, it knows where I am when I open the app. I click UberX on the, or set pickup location and select an UberX, and it knows where I am. I can tell it where I'm going, and all happens. Whereas if you ring up the taxi company in Canberra, it asks, that's not a literal transcript, but it's very close to it. And there's about 100 terms, and it takes, you know, 5 or 10 minutes to actually communicate the same thing as your click on Uber. So in this case, I would argue that a conversational interface is not the right answer. Another question about conversation is, can you make a useful conversational interface if the agent that you're interacting with doesn't have an understanding of the world? And I don't know how many of you were around in 1969, but Terry Winograd's PhD, where's my cursor? Maybe I'll skip this. Attempt to open a link. Do you think I should try again? Maybe I won't go through that because I've only got 20 minutes. But the lesson in 1969 was that if you wanted to have a conversational system, you had to program in all this knowledge of the world with the universe of discourse. So Winograd taught the system Shrudlu all about pyramids and cubes and spheres and cylinders and so on, and colours and the relationship of on top and so on. And there's an example dialogue with that system that's reported on this webpage, which is truly remarkable. It's just absolutely wonderful. And for 1969, it's incredible. But the question for us is, isn't it true now that to have meaningful dialogue with a computer system, that system has to have an understanding of the world? And we're very unlikely to succeed with an open domain system because we won't be able to build the knowledge into it. So another way of phrasing this, as I've also heard in the recent election campaign, is that there's never been a more exciting time to be a millionaire. And Qi's opportunities were very much targeted to commercial companies, building apps, building services, cloud services, new devices, new ecosystems, new business models, etc. And basically recruiting millions of users and exploiting the data that they contribute. And a great deal of the success of web search, machine translation and speech recognition is due to the huge volumes of data that people like you contribute by interacting with the systems. So does that mean that academics and search masters are locked out of all the interesting stuff? I don't think they are. But that does raise the question, how can industry people or academics, how can non-industry people do interesting research or run successful search projects? So the first possibility is small-scale search. So Martin White, who's well known in the industry search area, did a survey for the European Union and found that there were 40,000 organisations in the European Union that employed more than 500 people. And a very tiny percentage of those organisations deploy enterprise search at all. And the ones that do are generally very unsatisfied with the effectiveness of the search. So do you provide effective search of your organisation's information, or your own for that matter? There's a great potential value that you can get in this space. The enterprise data does have more features than Trek ad hoc. There is some user interaction data, there's metadata, there's the structure of sites, there's all sorts of recency and so on. So enterprise search is not necessarily a lost cause in the same sense that Trek ad hoc may be. So there are lots of opportunities to make small-scale search, and I don't mean just enterprise search. Search in libraries, there's all sorts of opportunities. And there's loads of research opportunities as well, in evaluation, in user interfaces, systems for formulating queries better, ranking obviously, spelling correction. It's a completely different problem in the enterprise context or a small-scale search problem to on the web. So Microsoft's active in this space, but we look at the world from a Microsoft products perspective, and there's loads and loads and loads of open water between these different things that we've been working on. Second possibility is to use data from industry, and commercial organisations do give access to data sometimes. Alistair and colleagues had access to Microsoft click logs, I believe. Bodo pointed out the Enron data, not that Enron voluntarily contributed it. And then, of course, there's the Netflix challenge. And Microsoft Research has made available the entire Microsoft academic graph, all the publications and authors and venues and so on for 100 million or more publications. And there's a challenge. There was a challenge at Wisdom, and I think there'll be other challenges at maybe KDE. I'm not exactly sure of the details of that. Another thing you can do is leverage industry APIs. So I went to the web to find out about Yahoo Boss, which I heard about a long time ago, which is build your own search system on top of the Yahoo index, which is actually the Bing index underneath. And I discovered that Boss stopped a couple of months ago, but there is another way of doing it using this YPA thing. And Microsoft is very, very keen to get developers building up applications on Azure, the Microsoft Cloud solution, and we're providing APIs for speech recognition, for search, for there's dozens of these apps. If you go to this link, which I won't attempt to open for fear of further embarrassment, loads and loads of APIs there that you could build into research projects or to your own search solutions. Fourth possibility, of course, is to make a big breakthrough. Show us that you can get 10 relevant documents in the first 10 on the Trek ad hoc task. But you better make sure that you use the latest university equipment. And there's a fifth possibility. Come over to the dark side. And that's me. Thank you.
Questions? Good time for question discussion. Doesn't have to all be directed at Dave, it can just be discussion amongst ourselves.
So you mentioned that actually enterprise search is kind of a gap that maybe either both academics and also industry commercial systems that have fallen in. So I just wonder, what's the biggest difference between enterprise search and the search engine that we use every day?
There's a load of different differences. One of them is that there's such sparsity of user interaction data. Okay, so Bing has hundreds of millions of monthly active users, and there's a huge accumulation of data that tells us 90% of people who submit this query click on this URL. Well, that's an obvious training example to feed into training our ranker, and you can use the same data for spelling suggestions and all that sort of stuff. So that's one difference. Another difference is that on the web, people publish in order to be found. Nobody creates a website that they don't care about. They want customers to come, or they want students to enroll, or they want to get their information out there so people can find it. Whereas in an enterprise, in an organisation, people deposit rather than publishing. They create documents and they're just on a hard drive, or they're in a document storage system, records management system or something like that. A third challenge is that a lot of enterprises, for example, I talked to one of the people at Shell, and there are 200 different types of information repository, and to provide a single search box access to all those different repositories is a massive challenge. And for a small company like Funnelback, a huge challenge was developing the adapters, to actually get the information out of Documentum, out of just notes, out of the EMC squared, or out of Enterprise Vault or eVault, or all these different sources. So it's a very challenging problem in its entirety, but it is possible to make gains and to deliver substantial value.
Thank you.
With enterprise search being a gap and getting a lot of scope for improvement, how do we overcome that? What I found is businesses just have a very low care level, aim for enterprise search in general, because it's the cost center, it's improved, yes, they've got extra information, but kind of lacks that.
Yes, and there've been, there was a wave where organisations, or some organisations, spend very large sums of money installing an enterprise search product. Then they spent very large sums of money on consultancy time to configure and parameterize whatever, and it still didn't work. And then the reports of negative experiences found their way back into the industry and analysts like Gartner and Forrester and so on. And then a lot of those companies reinvented themselves as doing search-based applications, and it wasn't about search, it was about different sorts of things built on top of search. So there's a bad reputation to be overcome. That's definitely true.
What's Microsoft see as the future of this space? Like Google recently moved to enterprise and commissioning all their servers and stuff, the devices. Are we just going to move to the cloud and have another mediocre enterprise search business? Or do you see some real buzz coming in?
I'm not in a position to announce anything or make any official comments on behalf of the company. But it's certainly true. If you think about it, Microsoft is trying to host enterprise data in Exchange 65 and 365 and Azure and Office 365 and so on. And you think about the problems of providing high quality search in that environment while maintaining absolute security and privacy. As Microsoft, the RMIT might choose to host its enterprise data in our cloud, but we can't go in and look at the query logs or look at the content of documents or whatever. If the world found out that Microsoft had done that, then reputation for compliance and security and privacy and so on would be would cost us far more than we could possibly gain by doing it.
I sometimes think about enterprise search. Part of the problem might be that the off-the-shelf product, like someone developed the product, the search product to you and give it and you start using it. But then, as we know, like from research of the industry, search by itself is an evolving process. Each time you need modification, you need to understand the user, you need to understand. Can we say that's part of the reason why enterprise search within the enterprise firm, because it's selling a product without actually keeping developing it from, and each enterprise has its own context that requires different way of dealing with it?
Yes, so a big problem that I experienced in Funnelback was that an organisation would set up a project, to do search. We're going to do search, and they'd assign Damiano, you're going to lead the search project, right? And you've got a budget of such and such, and you go out and you select products and vendors and so on, and then you set it up, and then you're moved on to the accounting and finance project or something, and there's no one there who's even monitoring what's going on in the search capability, and it deteriorates over time. So one of the things that I was most proud of in my time at Funnelback was a former Funnelbacker, was developing a methodology for evaluating search. Particularly, it works best for website search. But basically, you create a test file which has a set of queries, and associated with each query are the right answer and the second best answer and the third best answer of whatever there is. Okay, now you think at RMIT, the business critical queries are enrollment, admissions, scholarships, library, whatever. There's a bunch of queries that are pretty much standard from one university to another. So you make a test file of 100 test queries or so with the right answers, and the webmasters and the people who run the business areas know what the right answers are. So you create this set, and then you algorithm to set the parameters on the search engine to maximise the performance. You do a measure MRR or something other else. And if you sort the queries by descending order of performance, then at the bottom you get the dregs, the ones that no right answer was found in the top 10 results. And we had a diagnostic interface where you could click on a button and, oh, look, it's it's not even in the crawl. Someone's got a robust text that keeps out the search engine crawler, or hey, this page is supposed to be the right answer. So one example from the London School of Economics was that the query Bachelor of Arts, the answer was the faculty handbook with 700 pages or something other like that, and that didn't seem to be a terribly good answer. And so, because you're not only monitoring and operating the search engine, but you're also publishing the data, you can change how you publish things to improve things. And selecting the business critical queries is not the ideal thing to do. So we had a mechanism where you could randomly pick queries from the search log, and then the webmaster or whatever would go out and try and work out what the right answers for those queries were. And you could then run the tuning whenever you like.
So basically, is it the evolving process, like you keep tuning the algorithm, try to talk in a different way, or it's one-time thing? You give it and then...
A lot of, it's hard to give a single answer to that. A lot of the problem comes because the university changes or the organisation changes how it publishes information. We've just brought in a new, everything's on WordPress, or we've moved all our stuff to, something in the cloud or whatever. And the information is now not even in the index, or the features that indicated that this answer was important. The URLs now have a completely different form, or the amount of links to them, or whatever. So whenever the content changes significantly, then you need to retune to adapt to that change.
So basically, in order for enterprise search to get successful, the enterprise also have to understand that they need the refining process of real time, and that's adapt to this kind of thing.
My belief is that search is actually quite important to a lot of organisations, and that an investment in a fractional position as search master for the organisation, just monitoring, reading the complaints that your bloody search engine sucks. Reading those complaints and tuning every now and then would make a lot of difference to the organisation's success.
I guess I don't want it to be all about enterprise search, but I do have an enterprise search question. I don't know, and I appreciate that you don't work for Funnelback anymore, but did you ever come across any examples of where enterprise search really made the company a lot of money, or doing it well? Because there was this one of these sort of myriad business reports that claimed that web search has made the world something like $750 billion in 1 year alone, and it was through advertising, the size of the advertising market, but it was mostly just the amount of time that everybody saved by getting the information they wanted. And it was an astonishing sum of money. So I've often wondered, are there any stories, not 750 billion, but are there any stories about, I know how hard it is to get information in this organization, and how people invent all of these coping strategies to actually get information that doesn't mean so they don't use the search engine. But yeah, did you come across any sort of really sort of cool success stories?
It's very difficult to quantify the benefit. When Funnelback got the gig at Westpac, if you searched on Westpac for housing loan, you got 10 archive media releases with no indication of what they were about. When Westpac had a home loan centre and home loan calculators and all that sort of stuff. And we like to think that some number of people came to the Westpac site in the past and said, "What the hell?" and went somewhere else. And now they go there and they can find everything that they want, and that, you know, a home loan to Westpac could be worth, you know, $750,000 or something like that. But there were people who did studies, you know, for like, you know, IDC Consulting, you know, Susan Feldman, you know, estimating how much money American Airlines saved through having more effective search. A lot of these studies are quite old, and they also, you know, rely on assumptions about, you know, what people would otherwise have done.
So just to sort of tie in the rest of your talk, you're talking about the benefits of the financial benefits for any process. What about the financial benefits for the chatty thing?
Well, the
Conversation.
I believe, I don't have any figures, but I believe that WeChat is very, very successful, economically and otherwise. And you know, there's the opportunity to do commerce, there's opportunity to do advertising, etc., etc. There are some evil things to me that sound like evil possibilities, if you think about it. So I think there's quite a lot of opportunity. While we're talking about that, yeah, it'd be really nice to have a holiday in the Bahamas, wouldn't it? You know, flying Bahama Airlines. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that search engines allow you to do like calculations, like you can put in a calculation and search engine will show the answer. And you can also do things like you search, like when it's 10 p.m. in Melbourne, what time is it in London? So stuff that in the future search engines are going to return much more stuff to you. So what's your opinion on like the way the search engine has everything within it already?
Well, the search engine's only as good as the information that it's working on, and so, you know, the web content, the partnerships.
Those calculators don't come with content, like the calculators are like coded within the search engine itself.
That's true, but I think there's a, you know, Bing is also doing, you know, predictions of football results and election winners and so on and so forth. But I think people would actually like to find the, you know, the real information about, you know, polls of actual people and so on. So I don't think the, you know, the content on the web is going to go away. But you know, if you look at Wolfram Alpha, you know, there's a considerable expansion of, you know, what you might actually use.
Thanks. I think, yeah, we can move on to the next speaker. Yep. Thanks again. Next speaker is Wilson Wong. Dr. Wilson Wong did his PhD at UWA. Hasn't been around as long as Dave Hawking, but he's been doing his own great stuff. After his PhD and after some postdoc work over there, he actually was here at RMIT working on conversational systems. So that was on a project we had at that time, and has since moved on to bigger and much better things with Seek, where he leads the search quality team. And Seek is obviously a great company doing big things across the board. Seek search is obviously very important to their core business, and us at Melbourne Uni are very happy to have almost a project with Seek if we get it signed in the next 2 weeks. But anyway, thanks, Wilson.
Cool, thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, I'm feeling like this now, you know, after presenting thanks to, but anyway, yeah. So, what is the first thing that you guys think of when you see or hear Seek brand? Anyone?
Jobs. Jobs and growth.
So yeah, so jobs. So I mean, it's a no-brainer. So I think a lot of us, you know, the Australian public, you know, we associate the brand Seek with jobs, but what it actually speaks to is actually what we started off as 19 years ago. We started off as a jobs board, or should I say the jobs board that took the jobs classified from the print to online. And that was 19 years ago, and we've evolved a lot. We have matured and evolved a lot since then. And the first part of this talk, I'll briefly run you guys through the journey that the SEEK group has gone through, and after which I'll introduce or give you guys an overview of the search quality team and some of the cool stuff that we've been doing in terms of improving the quality of the search results that we provide to the Australian public when you come to us for jobs, or the companies who come to us for great talent. And during the first few years, the first few years of operation, the first 1 or 2, we started off with around 500 ads. And back then, we actually had a team of people dedicated to manually keying in the ads daily from the papers. So that was back then. And back then, we offered structured search, this structured SQL query for the very small database of jobs back then. And that period is what we consider as the first phase of growth, where all we really were concerned about during the first few formative years was really just to, hey, let's get all the ads from the prints and bring them online. And staying true to our goal, about 7-8 years later, we had 200 times more job ads online. And back then, in 2005, we clocked about 100,000 visits a day. And as we mature, we started offering full text search to allow for job seekers to access our database of jobs. And that was during that period, that was what we consider as the second phase of growth. The goal back then was just to maintain our dominance in the domestic market. And under the hood, we were aggressively expanding internationally. And while the stories around our international expansion are not something that the Australian public have heard of a lot, but I'll give you guys a quick run through in the next few slides. And in around 2011, that was when we entered our third phase of growth. That was when, led by the introduction of a new product, job seekers profiles, where we get the Australian job seekers and the Kiwis to come on board and say, hey, create a profile with us, and you get the flow and benefit from that, led by that. And that's where we are today. And who would have thought that 19 years ago, with just a handful of ads that people actually manually key in with structured search, that we would have grown to this size, that now we are part of so many people's lives. And obviously, to cope with the growth of the variety of the products that we were introducing to help us transition from just a mere jobs board to an online employment marketplace, obviously the team have to grow. And just down the street, St Kilda Road, the product development team back 5-6 years ago was about 50 people. And today, we have got new recruits, and me being one of them. And today, SEEK's position in the employment market remains strong, and this is reflected in the share of placement. When someone looks for a job to successfully fill roles, the role that SEEK plays in facilitating those placements, that's about 33%. And that is 9 times more placements than the next closest competitor. And going back to the topic of our international expansion, so since day one, SEEK has been expanding domestically. So while trying to retain or cement our position in the market, so we ventured into New Zealand. The Kiwis took us with an open arm, and we also started looking into the education and learning space, and also the business franchise area. And it was around, that was the first 10 years or so, it was around 2007 that we started going into international markets. And it started off with Zhaopin, the Chinese markets, followed by Brazil, Cattle, and then Southeast Asia between 2009 and 10 with JobStreet and JobsDB acquisition. and then in Mexico, and more recently, we also went into the African and South Asian market. And this expansion is not something that a lot of us have heard about. But with that footprint, what we meant by that is that now the brands and products under the group, C group, has now worldwide exposure of close to around 4 billion people. And as we gone through or still going through the journey of transitioning or evolving from a small domestic jobs board to now the largest global employment marketplace, we think to ourselves along the way, why are we doing what we're doing? And with that, our purpose evolved. And now the purpose is to help people live more fulfilling and productive working lives and organizations succeed. And this purpose is what defines why we do what we do on a daily basis. And if that, well, no moral high ground whatsoever, but if that still doesn't resonate with you, there have been a lot of research or surveys that were done regarding employee satisfaction. And in fact, our Job Street business in Malaysia, they did a survey regarding employee satisfaction a few years ago, and about 78% of the respondents came back to them and said that they're not happy in their current job. And you might think, then how does search quality specifically relate to that purpose? As what Lawrence has said, oh, pizza.
Yes.
Do we need to pause or
Get antsy.
do we need to pause or something for the guys to get pizza? Or?
Sorry?
Do we need to pause or stop a bit for the pizza to go around? Yeah.
Okay, question time.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'll be quick. I wouldn't want to get in the way of you and pizza. But anyway, like what Lawrence has said, search plays a very big part at SEEK. And the reason why I say that is that many of the products which form the backbone of the business, they are actually search-based. And the two that are very important are one, job search, the one that we're very familiar with when we go to seek.com.au and look for opportunities. That's the candidate or job seeker facing side of the search product. And on the other one, which is also less known, is what we call as talent search. That is when we allow advertisers or hirers to access our profiles through search as well. And we have got two teams under the search stream who are responsible for the front-end experience of these two products. And obviously, search don't run itself, we just front ends. And around 2014 or so, the structured data team was formed, tasked with the advancement of work around the curation and improvement, maintenance of data assets, such as some of the taxonomies and ontologies that are used heavily in search and also other products in the business. And in Jan 2015, I led the formation of the search quality team, tasked with only one thing alone. It's called MI. Can you guys guess what that is? MI.
Mission Impossible?
Mission Impossible, yes. A lot of people think that was the case until this team was formed, and I'll share with you some of the success stories. It's actually, good try, measurable improvement, which is at the core, at the heart of search. Now, so again, these are the three, kind of 2.5 main products that are powered by search. For example, job search, I've mentioned this before. When advertisers post the ads, job seekers around Australia and New Zealand will get to access or search for opportunities on desktop, mobile devices, and new jobs will also be sent out or pushed to them. And the other one, talent search. And let's zoom in on this product. So this user interface, I don't think a lot of us here have seen this before, unless you are from the recruitment industry or from the HR department. Anyone? I don't think so, right? So anyway, so there are two tabs. I'm not sure if you guys can see. There are two tabs at the top left corner. The one that is active now, that is what we call internally as uncoupled talent search. That is providing hirers the ability to free text search across our 5 million profiles. And the rest of the UI, it's rather consistent with what we see on job search. So we've got the requirement panel on the left. And what's unique to talent search is, which is a very strong signs of relevance that we use, is on the left panel, what we refer to as connection methods. So what this allows the hirers to do is to actually reach out to the candidates, say, for example, inviting them to apply for a job. I don't think any one of you know that. So hence there's value in definitely creating a profile with Seek. So inviting them to apply for a job, or just sending them a personalized message to say, hi, I like your CV, or something like that. And the other tab that's not active, that is what we refer to as coupled talent search. So what I mean by coupled is that searches are actually tied to the job ads that they post. So the queries are the job ads, and they're not able to change it, of course. And zooming in on a piece of work we did towards the end of the last financial year, zooming in on coupled talent search, prior to that work, how that coupled talent search worked was that it's essentially, well, before that, it runs off the job title alone. So for example, in this case, there are 8 tokens, senior, accountant, AP, residential, and so on and so forth. So what that algorithm did back then, before we did the improvement, was it just did a simple Boolean retrieval between all the possible bags of words of size k. Say, for example, if k equals to 2, it'll be just all the possible combination of 2 words or 2 tokens, and n between the 2 in the bags, and then just an O between them. And that forms the foundation of the retrieval and the different weights that we assign to the profile that are taken into consideration for the ranking. And that worked pretty well in most cases, but then there are scenarios where when the job ads, in particular the title, are just not concise or clear enough, or if they are just overly long and verbose. So for example, in this case, a coupled search is based on that example of a junior accountant, AP, and blah, blah, blah. So what it says there is that there are about 11,000 profiles that contain the word, or contain that combination of words in our profile database. But we know that there are actually more accountants in Melbourne than that number. So what that says is that the retrieval perhaps is not that right. And when we look at the ranking, it's not that bad, but then the first result, accountant, spot on, then a bit, hit and miss. And obviously we know why that's the case, because all words are being treated equal, and we are not really weighing any one up over the other. And what we did was we started experimenting with what we call the query intent approach. So what we did was essentially we just passed the job ads through an enrichment process, just tagging up the different parts. For example, in this case, the title, we have seniority, location, role title, work type in there. And what we did with that was, after the parsing, we rewrite the query based on our understanding of the domain, what the hirers are after, and just rewrite the query, and that improved the retrieval, both the retrieval and ranking, as we've seen here. So this is perhaps with 30 over 1,000 profiles with the word accountant in there. That's more reflective of what we kind of think we know in Melbourne area. And as you can see from the ranking, the top 3 jobs, in fact, I don't have space here, but all the top ranked results are junior accountants. And obviously, what is improvement if we can't measure? And we A/B test the shit out of this. And what we found was that in the top, well, we have 20 results per page. And when we look at the top, when we look at the first page, when we compare the back of words approach against the query intent, what we saw was that there were 10% more profiles on the first page that were connected with. And also there is another metric that we refer to as connections per search. So in one search, how many connections overall, and it doesn't look at the pages, how many connections can we attract in one search? And that grew by 51%. And the business was so happy. Now, moving on to something that we are all very familiar with, or some of us, some of the professors here, I'm not sure if you guys look for jobs on Seek. Anyway, so moving on to job search. So the interface, we're very familiar with that. So on the left panel, we have the refinement panel and then the sort order at the top. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm not sure if you guys can see the second ad there. We are hiring a search developer, so yeah, I'm shamelessly helping out the recruitment process. Okay, so when we look at the click logs, what we found was that there was actually that behavior in some candidates where they give us very little in terms of keywords, or they don't provide us any keywords at all, and they're not giving us any classification from the taxonomy. What I mean by that is that when we look into that type of searches, there were no keywords, they're not specifying the industry whatsoever, and they're just searching by essentially, give me all the jobs in Mornington Peninsula, for example. And while we have some, we will keep out of this the discussion around why is that behavior and stuff like that. But when we saw that way of searching, when we look at across some of the metrics that we were monitoring, those kind of searching actually yielded the least favorable outcome across the metric. So when they don't give us much, and we don't need location to work with, currently we're sorting the results by date. And a few weeks ago, we started trialing when we started looking at relevant signals beyond just topical. If they're not giving us the classification, for example, accounting or healthcare and medical, construction, trades and services, when they're not giving us that, and they're also not giving us a single character in the keyword box, and with only location to go by, then what should we do? And that was when we looked at our logs or click logs. And the hypothesis that we went with was for different geographies, there are industries that are unique to that area that define the local economy. And so based on that, that will dictate the hiring, the recruitment process, and the ways that the candidate in those geographies would search. So based on that hypothesis, we went in, we looked at the click preferences from our historical searches, sharing similar criteria, and we incorporated that as an additional signal into the ranking, and we introduced sorted by relevance. And when we looked at the results from the A/B test, what we found was that the top 3 results, there were actually 23 times more jobs. When we just look at the top 3, there were actually 33 times more jobs that were applied for when we did just that one signal, incorporated just that one signal. And in terms of the searches that actually convert or attracted job apply, at least one job apply, that grew by 3%. And the business was happy. And we'll be doing more of this. So thanks. I wouldn't stand in your way of pizza.
The last question, what I can do is just start handing pizzas and take them around to the tables. Is anyone gluten-free? Because we've got a couple of gluten-free options. No? Okay. I'm just going to distribute different versions to different tables, but I mean, thanks, Wilson. Well, stay there and take some questions.
Yeah, sure, let's go through.
And if anyone wants to get a drink as well, I don't know if there's a bottle opener, but there's one on my bag. So.
Yes. So I have a question. Yeah. So when you said so you classify the query according to the different types of the location. So how is this process? Do you have like a taxonomy of seniority, location, or
yeah? So from the team responsible for this data assets,
yeah.
worldwide.
So you maintain
maintain that. curation, machine learning, learning from the text.
Yeah, and then the weighting. So how do you decide that their role is more important than the location?
Yeah, because this is when we bring in the domain-specific knowledge. So we know that for others searching certain things, perhaps they would favor this over that, and that's when the domain side of things comes in.
Okay. So one thing that sort of came up in your talk and made me think of, companies like Sequence Census where search is so central, but it's really part of the process. And that's introducing this different aspect of search engine, right? That's not a standalone component, but it's part of a real workflow. And that's got to be one of the challenges to address. How do you understand how search fits into these things, and how do you customize the way to resolve
Yeah,
it?
and the whole thing of search-based applications, that Gregory Graffenstadt, wrote a book about, is all about that. But Wilson's application is a classic one of being able to demonstrate the value of enterprise search. This measurement of did people actually apply for a job? And that's worth real money.
Yeah. So I mean, continuing from that, there are a lot of these techniques that we are doing now trialing. In fact, they have been in existence for a long while now. They've been research and improve and improvise. And it's like what we say, it's only when we get the buy-in understanding from the business that we get to apply this kind of age-old techniques or tricks in information retrieval. And once we start delivering, demonstrating values, that's when we get to do more and more of these things.
And one does wonder what the potential applications for natural language understanding and conversational search in the job seeking market.
In fact, I'm having a side discussion with him. It's still early stages, but something that.
So Paradise, that frame is one of my favourite pieces of work. There's a beautiful, and what the work we did was, look at those objective measures, use regression to reduce to, what situations resulted in those factors, and basically determine what's the predictor of. And of course, at the time, word error rate was the 97% predictor, right? So it'd be real. We talked with Damiano just rerunning those sorts of experiments now that it's so much better, and there are all these still these other ones, just to see how that balances out there.
So how much of the improvement relates to the masses of data?
All of it. I mean, some of it's the deep learning aspects, but of course that requires massive data to train up. But yeah, it's the availability of data that is the big.
But Seek provides the opportunity to narrow domain, like the blocked world. It's a big step up from the blocked world. But, jobs have applicants and they have qualifications.
And that's where the leveraging the more interesting, rich techniques like natural language processing, deeper understanding of what a document is and what a person's journey is. That's where you'd hope you get some results. It's not about the retrieval performance itself, but really understanding documents within that domain.
Do you get traffic directly from, say, Google?
So that's something that I'm also very closely.
Yes, maybe I've got the
years ago, I worked at pages. At times I felt like we would be better off just simply focusing rather than making it searchable by Google more easily. And not bothering with their own search. But that was when I was feeling depressed. Even though it's like you could specialize it, more than Google,